Okay, we're back in Adobe Experience Design, or Adobe Xd, and we're moving on now to the fifth tutorial, and this is just laying up a basic wireframe, laying up some shapes. We're going to produce just two screens to give an idea of certainly laying up some planning and wireframing and how to use the grid system we've looked at previously with doing some design elements. Okay, so we've got the welcome screen. We'll just go for the iPhone 6, 7, and it'll open up the template for that. So we've already seen before we've got an artboard. So the minute that opens up, a good idea would be to name the artboard, and I'll just call this the home because this will be the home screen. Always important to name your artboards. Certainly down here, bottom left, you've got two icons. One's for symbols, the other one's to show you the layer outline, and it will give me the artboard there. Nothing else is on the page, so there's no elements, so that's the only item that's listed there. Once I've got that, I will set up the grid, and if you go over to the right where the properties are, and you'll see down at the bottom it's got grid. If I switch that on, now I'm going to have a grid that is 25 pixels square. Again, you know, this may vary depending on the project, but certainly you can use a grid you're comfortable with, or certainly if you're designing something for a target, or you've got some information where you need to lay out a grid in a certain way, then you may adjust that on preference, or that you've been given instructions to have a certain grid size. Okay, so I've laid out my grid, and again, how to zoom in, number of different ways. Command plus or minus, hold the space bar to move an artboard around on the pasteboard, which is this gray area, or certainly if you've got a trackpad, you can just do a pinch or a gesture to zoom in. Okay, so what we will do is lay up some elements on the home screen. So we're going to just lay up a few items on the, we're going to make a symbol, but we'll look at symbols in future tutorials. And we're just going to make two screens, and this is going to be just a grayscale shapes that you would find in a wireframe. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to lay out some shapes on here. So first of all, I'm going to go to the elliptical tool to make a circle. And again, as we've seen before, it will let you know where you are on the center. So I'll just get the center where I'm going to put it. Certainly if you're doing it in a real project, you would have probably done some planning and planned everything out. You might have a style guide you're adhering to, and certainly for elements, but this is just to show the functionality of certainly using XD. Now, we looked at before, if you're using shapes, if I press shift, that constrains the shape to its proportions, like a perfect square or perfect circle. And if you hold the Alt key, Alt and shift, that will make it start from the center. So if I just drag out the shape on here. Now what I will do is, the fill is transparent on here. I'll just get a little bit of a shade on there to color that in. Pick a shade and close that down. Also, I'm just going to make the border around it, or the stroke, larger. Okay, so this is maybe where it might have an avatar or an image on there. So we've laid out a image on the top. Okay, we'll just put some text on here. How you do text is you press the text tool, or you can press T on your keyboard, and then once you've done that, you can click where you want the text to go. Okay, once we got the text tool, I'll just bring in some text and paste some text in. Once you've typed it in, you can change the font, which select a font of your choice, and then we can change the size. So I just need to center it, so you can center a line or left a line on the buttons in the properties on the right, and then you can change the sides of the font. You can use the arrow keys to do that, or you can just type it straight in. And I've got this, and it's going to be a quote, so we'll just change this reference to it, make it smaller, make that 23. Got that. Okay, I'll just get the select tool. Now what you can do is you can certainly move this in and certainly out, and that would scale certainly your text and make it smaller, or bring it in. And I'll just move that here, and then again I'll just make sure the text is centered. And also, if you want to change the text color, it's coming a little bit gray, you again go to the fill, and what I'll do is just realign it and make it certainly a solid black. And then I'll move my block to align it up and get it. Again, you'll have the smart guides which will appear and tell you it's in the center, which is good. And then once I've done that, I'm going to put a button down the bottom, but the button I will make into a symbol. But before I do that, I'm going to just realign this where I've got the ellipse shape here. You need to name all your elements, so what I'll do is give it some sort of meaning. So I'll just call that avatar, so I know what that is. And also I'm just putting the order it is on the page, so you know I know where these elements are. So finally I'll just do my button. So first of all, again, I'll just drag it out down the bottom here, make a nice square button. What I'll do is just zoom in a little bit so I can see it. What I'll do is leave the border on the, I think it's 3, and then I'll give it a fill color on here. I think I've lost the selection. I'll just reselect that again. Okay, I'll get the fill, just bring that in on here like that. Okay, so I've got the button on there, and then what I need to do is I need to put the text on top. I'm just going to call it generic. I'm just going to call it button. And again, once you've done that, you need to get the font you want it to be. And then you might want to make the size a little bit bigger. There you go. You can always scale it once you get in position. So I'm going to put it here, and it lets me know if I'm in the center. I can move that around. Again, it depends on how you're going to have these, certainly if it's uppercase or lowercase, certainly where you're doing your measurements from, but certainly you can scale your text by just putting this little handle here that you can pull in and out, and we'll sort of align it up there. And then what I'll do is I'll just change the fill color of that and just make it sort of totally white. Okay, so what I have done is got the button on there. I'll just maybe slightly make it a little bit bigger. Again, get it into position. Okay, so I've made the button there, and you'll see it here in the outline. Now I'll just move that down, and then I'll move that here to keep it in the order of it appears on the page. And then once I've done that, what I will do is I'll just give it a little bit more meaning. The text just says what the text layer is, but I can change this and call it button. Whoops, button dash B G, and what that will change it to button background. Now what I could do here is change this to button text, and that just gives me certainly an idea to identify what those two elements are. Now what I can do is certainly shift click both of those, and I can either certainly right mouse click or control click to group or make a symbol. But what I might do here is I'll make symbol, where it's got symbol up here. Now I'll just undo that and show another way of doing it. If I click on the symbol icon down the bottom, I can just, once those two elements are selected, I can click here to make symbol and it will add the symbol up here. Now if we go back to my layers, you'll see it'll appear here, symbol 1 of 1. So you know, I can name this to call it button. Whatever it is, I'll just call it button 1, but certainly you give it some sort of meaning, and now we've got that. Now I'll just, my color of my, I'll just see if we can change that to a little bit of a better color. That's it, it's slipped a bit. Okay, so we've put some text on there, we've got some, a little avatar on there, or what could be an avatar. And certainly we got all that information ready on a page. We sort of lined it up with our grid on the page, and now we just need to make another screen. So how you do the other screen is I can click on the artboard, and if I go here, I click the iPhone 6 and 7, it'll just put 1 next to it. Now once I've done that, I need to name that artboard. I'll call it gallery, because this could be where you put some images on there. And then again, grid, and if you remember, I did it 25 pixels. Now you can use this as a default, so if you're happy with certainly using this on a regular basis, and you can make that your default starting point, so you just click default once you've made it that, and it will do that each time. If you're using a grid you're quite happy using. Okay, so on this page we're going to have a title bar across the top, so I'll just get a shape and I'll just drag out over the top. I can just get a color, but what might be best, I'll just get it to match my button. So how I would do that is, you see the eyedropper or the pipette, I click on that for the fill, I hover it over the button there, and it gives me that color. I'll turn the border off, so that's going to be my title bar. And what I'll do is make some text. I can make it anywhere I want. I'll just put it on here, gallery. I'm going to then get the font I'm using, change it for that font, it's missed it. Make sure I've got it selected. Okay, once I've got that with the move tool, I can take it up here, and again I can scale it by clicking on this little handle here and getting the size I want. You know, ideally would have to do some planning on this to make sure everything sort of lined up, and also using the right sizes. Now I'll do that, and the last thing I'll do is make that just totally white so it stands out. So we've got the title on there. Now next thing we're going to do is to put some squares on here. I'm going to have them 6 sort of pixels, 6 not pixels, 6 squares wide basically. So what I'll do is get a shape. First shape I get is I just drag it there, pull that down. Okay, so once I've got that, I will just do the fill, and again I'll get the fill, which is the same as a button, and I've got that. Now underneath here I'm just going to have a name, so I'll just do it something generic. These would be sort of names, but I'm just going to put some text here. I'll call this picture. Oops, spell it right. Okay. Once I've done that, I will put that in the center there, line it up. Again, if you know, if you're doing this for for a real project, you would make sure everything's lined up. Now this is a neat feature. Certainly you can do things like this in Sketch as well. These sort of, once you've done something that you need to repeat, if I select those both items, I can go up here to where it's got repeat grid. Once I've found repeat grid, I can click on that and you'll see these green things here and here at the bottom. Now if I just drag that right out like that, you will now see that it's spread it across. And when I hover my mouse, I'll just zoom in a little bit there, you'll see it highlights pink. Now what I can do is increase the gap and move that across, and it pushes everything across. Now I want two more at the bottom, so I just drag that down like that. And again, I can adjust those if I wanted to by just moving these up and down. So that's really good. And you can just keep on doing that. So you don't have to really keep on making these elements or cut and pasting them. Now, once I've done that, I need to bring in my button. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure I've named all these certainly elements. Now, where it's got repeat grid 1, I'm going to call this image section. So again, how you name things is up to you, but this is for your own sanity moving forward, so you're really organized. But also, more importantly, it's for if you're working collaboratively or you're going to give this over for someone who's going to carry on the design or someone who's going to code it up like a developer. Now, I've got the title where it says gallery. I think that's fine. It sort of speaks for itself. And then I've got one where it's got rectangle. So I'm just going to put that and call it title bar BG. So that just means background. Again, whatever you have, it's up to you. And I'm just going to move these so, they're sort of in the order that they sort of appear on the page, title and those things. Now, what I can do is shift click both of those, and I can right mouse click, and I can go group, or I could click them on there. They've grouped, and I'll just say gallery title bar. Okay, so what that's done is group those two elements together so it keeps it nice and neat. The final thing I need to do is just bring the button in, and as this is only really a wireframe, I'll just bring in a button that I've already made and saved as a symbol. So I go down the bottom left and I click on the symbol. Here's my button here, and all I would do is just drag it and drop it, and I would place it there. So symbols are sort of reusable graphics that you can use all the time. The good thing about the symbol is we'll look at these in future tutorials. If I just double click on it, it works like a compound object. And if I go to change the fill now, I change the fill, maybe make it something like a blue color, it changes all the instances of it. So that's the power of it. You can then change the individual titles, but certainly it will run out a global change for you, so it saves you quite a lot of work as well. So if I just come back here, I'll just go back and I will select that color and just get it back to where it was before. Now what you can do also, if you do update something, you can again right mouse click or control click, and you can say update for all symbols. So you can do one change and then update it, and that will update everything. Okay, so what we've done here, we've just created two screens. We've been very careful in naming everything when it comes to these layers on here, so it's all organized and certainly sorted out, and it's got the title here, so we move that button certainly down. And then again here, what might be a good idea is if I realign the artboard so the home's the first, so again that works in some sort of order on here. Now certainly if I call this button 1 on there, and let's see if I update for all symbols, hopefully that will make some changes there, hopefully this will change as well. So that's changed the name certainly right across all those buttons are now called button 1, so we know what they are when they come out. Okay, so that's just how to do certainly a quick wireframe, how to do some text, a small snapshot of using symbols, using the grid to lay things up, Also using the repeat grid, which speeds up certainly repetitious elements, and also you can space things. And then again, if I wanted to change something with a symbol globally, I could just do update the actual symbol, and then it goes ahead and updates all the other instances where it's used.